Orson Welles, the Mercury Theater, and the War of the Worlds are still remembered 75 years later.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before...
We take you now to Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Jet of flame springing from the mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. Lord, they're turning into flames.
I've been hiding in this empty house near Grover's Mill. I'm obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living man on Earth.
We remain fascinated not only because of the broadcast's dramatic impact, but because of the story behind the story. By sending people into the streets, convinced Martians were attacking, the War of the Worlds taught us something deeply disturbing about ourselves, that no matter how sophisticated the tools of communication become, the trust we place in them and the limitations of human perception can make people believe just about anything. Myths and legends have accrued around this mythic and legendary broadcast from the start.
And I'm an atheist, and I love religion. I really do. And I don't love religion in a snarky, mean-spirited way. I unabashedly, sincerely love that we have religion. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't be here right now, being all postmodern and ironic. There'd be no civilization. If no one invented religion, we'd be fucked right now. Because at the dawn of man, civilization was the biggest and the strongest. And that's as far as we were going to go. It was whoever was the biggest, fucked, killed, ate anything they wanted. That was it. Civilization was a huge psychopath with a club going, I'm going to have rape for dinner. That was it. That's as far as we were going to go. And then, one of my ancestors, some weakling, said, look, there's no way I can beat that guy. But what if I trick him into thinking that if he doesn't kill and rape people while he's down here, when he dies, there's a magic city in the clouds, and he can go up and have all the cake he wants. Now, that's not a very well-formed plan, but he went and told the big psycho, and the psycho heard that and said, I like cake. Boom! There you go. That was the beginning of civilization. Now we can work on fire and writing and agriculture. That's religion. It's the old sky cake dodge. It worked. But, and by the way, things were great for a while. But then what was happening was that shit was going on all over the planet. They would just use different desserts. They would tell them about sky cookies or sky pie or sky baklava. So as each of these civilizations grew, they'd build ships, they'd go visit each other, and the one guy would walk off the boat and go, hey, did you hear the good news about the sky baklava? And the first guy went, it's cake, motherfucker, you're dead! And then, oh my God, there were the dessert wars. It was a nightmare. They were just killing people. It got so bad that every now and then, some dude would show up and go, hey, I got good news. There's cake and pie and cookies and for everyone. We can all share. And people said, nail him to a fucking cross. It is only cake. Oh my God. The only way sky cake tastes good is if up in the sky, the sky cookie and sky pie people can't have the sky pie. That's the only way sky cake tastes good. I did not spend my life not raping and killing people to not go up in the sky and have cake. Sky cake! So the next time you see some douchebags in front of an abortion clinic or trying to ban a Harry Potter novel, just say, oh, sky cake. Why are you so delicious?
Even things that I thought were set in stone, like literally set in stone, like the 10 Commandments, weren't. The 10 Commandments that we are almost familiar with are these rules that God simply told Moses on Mount Sinai without referring to them as commandments, without even setting them in stone. It's only later in Exodus, when Moses goes back up to Mount Sinai, that God gives him a set of 2 tablets of stone with these rules chiseled on them. When Moses gets back down off the mountain, he sees the people worshiping a golden calf, and he has a tantrum, and he smashes the stones before he reads them. So then Moses goes back up to Mount Sinai, and God gives him another set of stone tablets. And this is the first time at this point that they are referred to as the commandments. And they're chiseled into stone, so you'd sort of think that God's got to be pretty firm on the subject of commandments by now. But the rules are significantly different than those other rules. Like how all male children have to appear before God 3 times a year, however that's supposed to be accomplished, and how you shouldn't cook a baby goat in its mother's milk, and how every domestic animal's firstborn male should be sacrificed. But then the commandment goes on to say that if you don't want to sacrifice your donkey's firstborn male, you could go ahead and substitute a lamb if you really needed to. Some people think that without the 10 Commandments, morality in society would be relative and wishy-washy, but in the Bible, morality is relative and wishy-washy. In fact, it sure seems like our modern morality is much more loving and humane than the Bible's morality. Well, Father Tom saw me outside of church after Mass one Sunday, and he said, "Julia, you know, you always look so very sad in Bible study class." And I said, "I'm sorry, Father, it's just that God is so offensive in the Bible. Really, it's like he's bipolar." He said, "Well, you know, the Old Testament. Just remember that the people who wrote it were an ancient Bronze Age civilization. And the stories are legends. They're tales of trickery and deception that were told around the campfire by sheiks who made God impressive by their very ancient standards." I said, "Oh, wow. Looking at the Old Testament that way, it actually makes a lot of sense now, Father. Looking at the Old Testament that way, it's quite interesting." But Homer was also an ancient Bronze Age writer writing about gods. I mean, how much are we supposed to believe is actually true? And he said, "Well, there's no evidence that Abraham is anything other than legend, or Isaac, or Moses, or even the whole Exodus story." I said, "The Exodus story is a myth?" And he said, "Well, myth-ish." And I said, "How can something be myth-ish?" And he said, "Well, the Exodus story is a myth in the sense that it never actually happened." But it's not a myth in the fact that if people believe the story was true and shape their identity as a culture based on thinking that. But Julia, you can't read the Bible with modern historical eyes. You've got to read it with the eyes of faith, because this is the story that God wants us to know.